Reverend John Stanley here with Ordinary People. Today, our guest is William Walters. He's the director for Our Wisconsin Revolution. Thank you, William, for joining us.
Of course, John. Happy to be here. Happy to have these conversations. It's always fun to share the shop, or what's the phrase? I was gonna use the shoot the blank phrase, and then I was like, wait a minute, let's be a little more professional here. But it's also fun to be able to be open and honest and authentic, I think, in the conversations you're having, something that's sorely missing in organizing today.
Absolutely. But we got Sheila. She's on top of things. She does all the editing for our videos, and she would probably put a bleep in, I'm sure. So
talk shop might have been the better way to say it then. We'll talk shop a little bit today.
Yes, exactly. We'll shoot the shop. Anyway, so let's start our questions. My first question is, when did you first become interested in activism?
Well, that's an interesting question, John, because I don't want to sit here and make some weird semantics argument, but when you say activism, right, like what does that mean? I think most people are engaged in the issues that they care about from a very young age. And the term activism, there's a lot of negative connotations because a lot of AstroTurf national organizations, particularly right-wing organizations, have tried to demonize activists as, people who are perhaps naive or idealistic or intentionally agitating situations that otherwise aren't bad. And it's like, well, no, if people's lives are being impacted, if the material conditions of American citizens and people across the globe are being made worse by some of these decisions, you're not an activist for fighting against them. You're a human being. You're a member of your community. You're someone with a soul who wants to see the best that life can offer for as many individuals, as many organisms, because I think it goes even deeper than people, especially when you're talking about some environmental activists in particular that are advocating on behalf of our natural resources and our friends, in wildlife. But I've been, in terms of electoral activism in particular, I was really first engaged by Bernie Sanders' 2016 presidential run. The presidential campaigns are kind of the Super Bowl of electoral politics in a lot of ways. The eyes and the ears of the nation descend on politics once every 4 years for these massive fights. And realistically, I do think it's kind of unhealthy how presidential campaigns have kind of devolved into what is a fight now. Because, when billions and billions of dollars are being spent to elect your preferred candidate. But that's a whole nother conversation. Don't even get me started on the desperate need for campaign finance reform. In terms of when did I first become interested in organizing, let's say, it was in 2016 around Bernie Sanders' presidential campaign. I was in college at the time. And it really felt like the first time that we had a candidate on the biggest stage in the nation saying the things that mattered to me. He talked about the broken healthcare system. He of course was the first to really loudly and proudly advocate on behalf of Medicare for all. And that was kind of, that issue in particular really resonated with me. And it felt to me like, no duh, we're the wealthiest country in the history of our species. What do you mean we can't guarantee health care for our people? What's the purpose of a government? What's the purpose of a country if we can't even give our citizens the basic requirements of life? Food, shelter, clothing, health care. Like these are all the bare requirements to keep someone alive. And with the amount of wealth that we have here in the United States, if we can't make that promise to our people, then what are we doing here? And that kind of snowballed. Then I had a job that I really liked at the time, and would still be doing it if I didn't feel this calling, let's say, for politics. But I just kind of felt like I'm not going to be able to sleep at night knowing I'm not doing everything I can to focus on these issues that really matter to me. You might sacrifice, money. You might sacrifice all of these things that I don't think are as important as humanity, like the soul of society, to work in, in organizing, in the organizing industry. But I had to do it because I knew I was going to be doing this stuff either way. Going to events, helping to amplify marginalized and oppressed voices, assisting those who needed assistance, who didn't get the protection of the state itself, and fighting against the rich and the powerful as they consolidated their wealth and power, forcing everyone else, the 99.99% of us, to fall further and further behind. I was like, you know what, I'm going to be doing this work anyways. I might as well make it a gig. You might as well put your entire heart and soul into it, give 110% to it, because it matters and it impacts people's lives, and we should care about these type of things.
Yeah, ballrooms and statues and arches. Oh my.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we really need to focus on the important things like ballroom statues and arches.
People are going hungry, John. People are living on the streets, but you know what? They should just pull themselves up by the bootstraps and work harder, because I need your tax dollars to build me a ginormous ballroom to, an ode to opulence, designed exclusively to justify my extreme vanity. Like, it's disgusting.
It is. So when you became an activist, we just kind of made a little segue there, but there's skill sets that you already had, I'm sure, and skill sets that that being an activist helped you develop. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Well, organizing as a concept is something that most humans have done since they were children. I love to tell this story because I don't think I've even told my friends who are a direct part of it, but growing up, I was always the commissioner of our fantasy football league. And in a lot of ways, that is just organizing. You're setting a date for an event to happen. You're making sure that everybody who needs to be aware of the event knows the time and the date, and they're ready to go, and they have everything they need in place. And, food has been ordered, and, it's very same, conceptually similar to event coordinating or something along those lines. You're just doing it for a cause, rather than for money. and so much of my worldview is driven by this belief that, we can copy the ruthless efficiency of capitalism, but use good public policy, help improve the lives of real human beings as our quote unquote profit motive, as our North Star, instead of actual profit. And if we do that, we can make a happier, healthier world for everyone, a world that we can all be proud to call home. The vast majority of people want the same thing, right? We want happy, healthy, thriving communities that everyone is proud to live in. It's just about getting it done, doing that. And organizing, I mean, it comes in many different colors, whether it's organizing your fantasy football league, whether it's organizing your buddies to go to the bar on some random night to watch your favorite basketball team play. There's just, a scale to it. Organizing 5 people, 10 people, 20 people, 100 people, same concept, same work goes into it. Obviously, you got to get a little more experience once you start to get to larger events. And recognize that the time that goes into it is a little different, and that you're not necessarily reaching out to singular individuals, but singular entities to build out the infrastructure required. But a lot of it is very similar. Humans are social species. Humans are a social species. We evolved to work together. We evolved in communities. And taking that next step and saying, like, hello, my community, we need you to get engaged or get get involved in whatever this event that's coming up is, or whatever this project is, or whatever this movement is, to fight for something better for all of us in the long run. It's just about making sure people are well aware of the importance of this movement, what their role is in the movement, and then giving them all the tools and resources they need to fulfill that role. Everybody's got, I hate to call it a niche, but everybody's got a niche, just like every organization and every corporation have a niche. You have your role to play. One person can't be expected to do everything, but every person can be expected to do one thing. And if we're able to organize as many people as we possibly can, remembering that our numerical advantage is the only advantage we have over the rich and powerful. We're never going to out fundraise or out network them, right? It's mathematically impossible. 6 men have more wealth than the bottom 50% of Americans combined. But we can out organize them and we can outwork them because we outnumber them 1,000,000 to 1. So getting these bodies in place and finding a role that not only that the person enjoys, but that they're good at. People tend to like doing things that they're good at, and that also help advance the cause. Once you can build that infrastructure, yeah, the possibilities are endless.
So that's great, having natural abilities and using them, the skills that you already have, through other things to enhance and build your organizing toolkit, if you will.
And recognizing those skills too, John, because I really believe one of the biggest problems we have in modern politics is a lack of authenticity. Candidates often feel robotic, lab grown. The politician stereotype exists for a reason, and people across the political spectrum don't like politicians because they're imagining, the stereotypical politician from a Hollywood movie in the 90s or something.
They're AI
wearing, dressed up, perhaps AI, right? But like a self-serving narcissist who only cares about you as a number on a spreadsheet because they need your vote, rather than caring about you, the human being, and the experiences that you are having in the real world, and trying to work on and improve those experiences. So be real, be authentic. Don't try to present yourself as something you're not. I know, especially with social media, it can be really, really difficult to, imposter syndrome is easy to set hold now when you're seeing all the talented people and all the good work they're doing. But you don't, not everybody can be a Bernie Sanders. Not everybody can be an AOC. Not everybody has to be them either. If you're having a large event,
we already have one of each. Yeah,
we already got one. They're one of one, and expecting duplicates of these individuals, it's not fair to them, and it's not fair to you, because we all have our strong skill sets, and we all have our ability to shine. And finding that skill set and finding the best way that you can impact the movement, no matter how small it is. All of these little bits add up when you have millions and millions of hands behind you.
Right. And I'm not going to accept Bernie Sanders to the next question. So don't say Bernie Sanders, because the next question I'm asking you is, who inspires you? Can you find someone else? Because I was a Bernie Sanders delegate. He surely inspired me, but I'm going to ask you for somebody else, if you can give me someone else.
I could give you the I hate to say cliche answer, because it is very true. But most people are products of their surroundings and their upbringing. Like my parents were I was very fortunate. I was raised in a great home with loving parents who gave me every opportunity imaginable, who are good people and still fight the good fight and care about society and their friends and family and neighbors. My grandparents were fabulous people, same way. But I know that, I hate to say that that's a given, because like that is a given. They inspire me every day. But what I've really found as I've gotten into organizing, and I think the answer that you're more looking for when you say, who inspires you, it genuinely is my community. It is the people, when I'm going to events multiple times a week, who are out in their communities, who are stepping up without experience, afraid of what it's going to look like, because they've never done anything politically related. They've never done organizing, issue-based organizing or advocacy. And they were just like, you know what? I'm sick of this. I've had enough. And I might be scared, and it might be tough, and I might be worried, and I might be afraid to put a target on my back, but this matters to me. And this should matter to you too. So I'm going to stand up and fight for it. I'm going to organize a grassroots group in my community to start fighting for these issues. And as those organizations grow and bring on more members, and the people who are leading them get more experience, they become these foundational pieces to assist in other communities. And it starts to spread as regular folk see the impact that other regular folk are having. I love to say, often, particularly in communities, my community, for example, it's a very conservative community, suburban, but there are some, I definitely drive through some more rural areas. People who think like me often think they're alone, that they're the only progressive in town. That is not true. That is never true. You would not imagine how many like-minded individuals you have around you. It's just everybody's afraid to share their viewpoint because they think they're alone. So I'm inspired by the person who says, you know what? Enough is enough. I believe in something and I'm going to stand up for it. And they go and put a yard sign out in their yard for the progressive champion running in their community. They might be the only one on their block that has that sign, and their opponent's signs might be littered across the neighborhood. But they were like, I believe in this. This matters to me, and I'm going to stand up for those beliefs. I tell you what, other people in that neighborhood who think like this person but might have been a little afraid to do it themselves, they're seeing that and they're saying, oh, if John Stanley can put up a sign, I can put up a sign. And then all of a sudden, signs are popping up all over the place, and you are able to build a network that turns that single moment of passion and energy into a movement. And that is what America desperately needs, is a movement focused on advancing the causes of regular people, advancing the working classes' material conditions, because for too long we have been left behind as the rich get richer, as they consolidate power and resources, and the rest of us fall further and further behind. And then, of course, I am also inspired. We mentioned Bernie and AOC, but there are so many fabulous reps across the country. Ilhan Omar and Rashida Tlaib, what they go through every day, but still come out and they are fighting the good fight for good causes, because not only are they brilliant individuals, but they are morally and ethically on the right side of these issues. I think I usually don't want to touch on officials outside of the state, but because we mentioned Bernie and AOC, I got to jump on it. You know, a Ro Khanna, who has been fighting for transparency and accountability at the national level. He was by himself for the longest time fighting for the Epstein files, but he said, you know what, this is right. This is the right thing to do for the people of America. And, you know, all it took was one person fighting for it by themselves for weeks and weeks on end until Thomas Massie joined in. And then all of a sudden, you know, the little crack in the dam became a waterfall. So many fabulous officials all across the country. I couldn't even sit here and name them all. But there are good elected officials. It might not feel like it because of how many, frankly, aren't. In Wisconsin, we have a ton of great officials as well. Senator Tammy Baldwin has been working her butt off for years, fighting the good fight. At the House level, Representative Gwen Moore and Representative Mark Pocan, like, we do have leaders. This gubernatorial race that's coming up is going to be, you know, it's going to be fascinating because of how many, in my opinion, good candidates are running. But, you know, it's not a fantasy football team where you get to have 6 good candidates that all pick up a little bit of points so that we can defeat the one superstar on the other team. And I say superstar jokingly because I do not think that Tom Tiffany is in any way, shape, or form a superstar. But as Republicans tend to do, they consolidate. They don't want to fight against themselves because they're good little foot soldiers and they like to fall in line. So the only other candidate for governor on the conservative side dropped out months and months and months ago. But we believe in democracy here on our side, so we are going to let the primary process play out. And by doing that, we're creating stronger candidates and creating more inspired voters who believe in the promise of American democracy and will fight to advance it at all, for any and all reasons possible.
And, you know, there's a good point in what you said regarding those good representatives out there and activists. Because if you can imagine what this country would be if there was no resistance, people don't think that, you know, the other side does anything at all, but we do. We put up resistance, and if you want to know what you know, this country would look like without that resistance, you know, it wouldn't take long for you know, the swastikas to be flying over the Capitol if we didn't put up resistance to that, to the other to our opposition.
Well, there's the joke, John, that the only thing worse than a 2-party system is a 1-party system, right? Like,
exactly.
Not ideal, but it is what it is.
So, with that onslaught, how do you stop yourself from being burned out?
You don't. You're always going to be burned out. It's unfortunate, but if the fire in your belly is so hot and so, you know, deep within the very essence of your being that you know this is the right thing to do and this is the fight that I'm going to pick, I hate to say you get over it, because that's not the right way to phrase it, but you will come back because you know it matters and because it's important. And sometimes that means taking time for yourself to just kind of regroup, refocus, reframe your you know, your position in this movement. So maybe it's maybe it's finding a hobby or a passion outside of organizing, and you do it every day for an hour or two a day, just to get your mind off of the real world and to remember that there are other things out there. But something that always strikes me when I make that kind of, when I make a statement like that is, for a lot of people, they don't have the ability to take an hour or two a day out of organizing to focus on something else, because their very lives are at stake. I think of my friends in the LGBTQ community. Republican fascism is coming for a lot of marginalized communities. And some of these people can't just take a step away and say, I don't want to think about politics for a day or two, because politics is always thinking about them and it's always coming for them. And it's a privilege to be able to distance yourself even for an hour or two a day, and not being forced to focus on how you're going to survive. And that realization, if you want to talk about not getting burned out, that realization is something that motivates me, because I know that my friends are fighting for their very existence and they can't get burned out. They can't afford to get burned out, because if they do, it's very possible the system will strike away whatever rights or protections, very limited rights and protections they may have already had. And at that point, it's too late to fight back. So that keeps me motivated. That keeps me engaged and involved. I do think it is really important that if you have the ability to do so, make sure you're focusing on yourself when you can. A burned out individual with nothing to give doesn't serve the movement. But if you can give, 100% for 3 weeks out of the year, then you take a week off to recharge the battery and come back at full strength. We need you in this movement. I do not care who you are. I don't care what your skill set is. We need you. You matter. You are important. And we want you in this movement, because the working class will not be able to fight the powers that be without raw bodies, without numbers. That is our advantage, and we have to be utilizing it.
Oh, exactly. Even if that means just showing up, if it to a meeting or to a protest, it's being there. That just doing that is powerful.
I love to say, you've heard me say this, John, 90% of solidarity is just showing up, right? You don't have to give the speech at every event. You don't have to be walking around shaking hands and kissing babies' foreheads at every event. Sometimes just being there, listening and learning is more than enough.
Yes, and it shows other people that you care. It shows other people that on the other side that you're there as well. So it's very powerful.
Reminds people that they're not alone. Same as the yard sign argument.
Yep, absolutely. And that's something too, is that, a lot of people say signs don't vote. That's bull. Signs don't vote, as guns don't shoot people. It's a matter of, that's an endorsement. You're saying, I stand for this person, and other people see that and they know that, and they realize that, in the areas you were talking about, that if it's somebody who is, that everybody else is voting for, that you're taking a stand against, that other opposition, or it says, hey, I put my own, reputation on the line by having this sign out there as, an emblem in a dark area. It's a little light that's out there. So now for a serious question. I really, none of these have all been frivolous questions. No, but the really serious question, why are there so many songs about rainbows?
I can't lie to you. I do not think about rainbow songs on a regular basis. That's not something that's usually on the forefront of my mind. I mean, perhaps because it's a universal symbol, something that most everybody recognizes as, not just beautiful, but like a natural beauty to it, because it's not manufactured. It is pure. It's nothing but sunlight refracting off of water, right? Two of the most basic requirements of existence. But the two most basic requirements of existence, when put together at the right angle or the right opportunity, can create magic and can create beauty beyond comprehension. And maybe that could be applicable to the real world then. And maybe that's the life lesson we should take from it. Even if you're just one person in this movement, you might not see yourself as the sun providing energy for all of the planet. You might not see yourself as water, the bedrock of life, but you can create a rainbow too, as long as you're able to continue fighting the good fight, put yourself in the right situations, and fight for the right causes. Maybe there's a little bit of sun and water and rainbows in all of us.
That is actually really profound, and maybe you can just be a prism and refract the light.
Yep. If you're that single person in the community fighting for progressive change, by putting out your little sign, you are in a way refracting the community, trying to monopolize a viewpoint or an argument, which even deep down psychologically, if you're a fascist candidate and you're driving through a neighborhood of voters and you see 50 signs for you and no signs for anybody else, deep down you got to think they're internalizing that a little bit and perhaps coming to the conclusion, I can do whatever I want because I do have complete and total power, support, control, whatever. And just offering that little bit of resistance, fighting back, pushing back against them, even if it's just a small voice in the back of their mind that causes them to, glance back in their rear view mirror or think twice about passing some oppressive language in whatever next piece of legislation they're advocating on behalf of, then you've done a really good job, and you've helped the movement grow, and you've helped your neighbors to make a better world for everyone.
So I know that as the director of OWR, what brings you the most joy of your job? What really excites you and makes you happy?
So obviously there's a lot of aspects that I really love. There's nothing quite like winning a big election when you were the underdog and you had to not only fight against the Republicans, but like the electoral machine of capital, particularly with some progressive champions that we've seen winning all around the country. I'll use the Zohran Mamdani race as a recent example of that. But more than winning elections, because winning elections matters. I cannot sit here and lie to you. It has to be an outside, inside, outside strategy. You have to be applying public pressure, and organizations have to exist to fight for good causes and good policy. But if we're not getting anybody into positions of power to enact those policies, it's easy to have good ideas. It's really hard to execute on them. And if you're not able to win elections, you're not going to be able to execute. More than that, though, is going back to one of the questions you asked earlier as to what inspires me. It really does bring me pleasure when I'm able to see people stand up in their community and fight for the things that they believe in, even when it's not cool or popular to do so. Bernie Sanders picked that fight 10 years ago, and a lot of the things he was organizing on behalf of and advocating for that just made a whole lot of sense to me were labeled as radical or extreme, despite the fact that those same policies were used to immense success in some of our first world friends and neighbors and allies across the globe. But here in America, no, that's radical socialism. That's extremism. That's anything like that. What do you mean it's extremism to expect every citizen in the wealthiest country in the history of our species to have access to health care? Excuse me? That's extremism? But single individuals hoarding the wealth of entire nations is not extreme? That's ridiculous. So I find it's just so incredibly exciting for me when regular people that are, they have their own problems, their own concerns. They got jobs that they're worried about. They got friends and family that concern them and that they want the best for. But even with all of these structural barriers to organizing, they said, I've had enough and I'm going to do something here in my community. And whether that's standing up and running for office for a local position on your community board, whether it's school board, village board, or whatever, whether it's starting a grassroots organization that's focused on we think about some of the AI data center work that the fabulous organizations like Great Lakes Neighbors United have started fighting for across southeastern Wisconsin. Like, you have a cause that matters to you, and it matters to a lot of people because it impacts a lot of people. And you said, I'm going to be the one to take charge here, because if I don't do it, who will? And every day people like that are standing up in their community. Every day, people like that are reaching out to me, asking where to begin, how to get their foot in the door. And that answer, of course, is different for everyone. There is no right way to do this. There is no right way to start organizing. What works in one community is not going to work in another community. What worked for one person is not going to work for another person. Some people have really strong understandings of digital platforms, and they're able to grow massive organizations purely online. Some people aren't as well versed with technology, but they're incredibly friendly, warm, and people gravitate towards them in public settings. So they go to already organized community events, start chatting around, make a boatload of friends, and all of a sudden it's, hey, do y'all want to start a book club or something? They meet at the library once a month to go over to talk about whatever the book of the month was. They start getting into, issues that matter in their communities. They start, they become friends, which really is, I think, at the core argument for organizing, is that you are a friend of the people. That is your job. Humans like to be around other people that they enjoy spending time with, plain and simple. It's why the rich value networking so much, because networking, the value of it is making contact with people who could assist you in one way or another. Unfortunately for the ultra rich, they only see assistance as financial gain, but you could argue that friendship is transactional too. I offer you my friendship and my support, and in return, you offer me your friendship and support. You just don't have to use money as the only incentive, right? A marriage, right? I give you love for the rest of our lives, and you will give me your love for the rest of our lives. Like, the same thing is applicable to organizing. We are telling other people in our community, I care about you as a human being, and I care about these issues that will impact our lives, that will help our friends, our family, our communities. How can we work together to accomplish this? And go ahead.
I think you would agree, though, because we've talked about skill sets that you bring to activism. I think that you would agree that there are a lot of things that, for instance, when I started, if you'd asked me, can you lead a group? I would have said, or call a meeting. I'd be like, how do you do that? It's gigantic. Do I have to, I don't know, put out a reminder of the meeting every month, or, what do I have to do? It seems overwhelming, these tasks, but really they're a lot easier than most people would realize until they actually are doing them.
That's a great point, John. I think it's a yes and, because yes, it is intimidating when you hear about these things. And yes, we probably could and probably should offer some sort of, like, these exist, but I'm saying, and many of them do a fabulous job, but perhaps they just don't have the resources to be able to fully assist in the way that they should. Training programs for advocates and organizers, as simple as Robert's Rules 101, how to lead a meeting, or something along those lines. It is one of those things that with experience, it becomes second nature, much like riding a bike. But I tell you what, John, I'm not that old. I still remember the first time that my pop put me on a bike and said, like, go get him, Tiger. Like, you're scared, you're intimidated, just because it's a foreign experience. It's the first time that you've ever been able to do this. And once you learn how easy it is, it's like, how was I ever worried about that? But you were worried about that at one point in time. And recognizing the humanity of that, it's just an unfortunate part of the human condition, that we tend to be comfortable with experiences that we're familiar, and tend to be very uncomfortable with the unknown. We can help to prepare people to not make that unknown as dark as it was coming in. Shine a little bit of a light so that they might not have a full grasp. Perhaps it's just a flashlight giving them a little bit of the details required until they learn how to do it themselves, at which point the light in the room fully turns on. But we can offer that as organizers to make it easier, and we should be offering that as organizers to make it easier. At the end of the day, sometimes you just need to jump in the water to recognize that it's okay. It might have been cold when you dipped your toe in, but rip the Band-Aid off and get in. So I do think that it's a little bit of both. And I do think that you're right that it can be intimidating, it can be challenging, it can be scary. But sometimes, you know, if you want to grow, you need to tackle things that you didn't know you were capable of doing.
And this next question is a little bit obtuse, but just answer the first thing that comes off to mind. What is your greatest concern for the future?
Oh, man. I mean, there's so many. I genuinely believe that, you know, if you were looking for a single issue, I would say AI data centers. These have the opportunity to, I mean, this is potentially an economic cataclysm. We're using our public tax dollars to give the wealthiest, most powerful corporations billions and billions of dollars to come build behemoth facilities in our communities that are going to steal our fresh water, hoard our electricity, jacking up the price of power for everyone. Also, they can turn around and harness our data to sell back to advertisers while they train their AI models to eventually take our job. Like this has the potential to quite literally end all of what we would recognize as, you know, modern economic output. But I'm going to go even further back than that, from 30,000 feet, and simply say the consolidation of wealth. It is not sustainable to have a small handful of individuals own every aspect of our world. That it mathematically doesn't make sense. Businesses cannot produce and sell products if consumers don't have the resources to purchase these products. We see the conversation happening at the national level so often about, you know, birth rates. Why does nobody want to have kids? Because people can't afford to take care of themselves, let alone take care of kids, dude. Hierarchy of needs here. If I'm worried about putting a roof over my head and food on my table, the last thing I'm worried about, and this is unfortunately true with organizing as well, is going and marching in the street for a cause I care about, because I got to worry about surviving first. And if I can't afford anything, you know, any of the I don't even want to say perks, because frankly, these should be rights. But if I can't afford any of the basic requirements of life for myself, the last thing I want to do is bring another human being into this world and force them to suffer. Now, the rich and powerful want us pumping out children because that gives them more leverage from an employment perspective. If there's 50 people desperate for one job, whoever gets that one job is likely going to be doing anything they can to maintain that one job, including being mercilessly exploited, being brutalized, being abused by the bosses. It gives the boss an immense amount of leverage, because the boss can just say, oh, you don't want to come in tomorrow to work your 7th straight day of 20 hours? Okay, you're fired. I'll get one of the other 49 people desperate for a job. But if there's only 2 people who want that job, now the worker has all the power. The worker has all the leverage. And in what we need to do, the single biggest issue that the world is facing right now is the boss class has gotten way too comfortable with their position atop the socioeconomic pyramid. The working class has lost all leverage. The working class no longer has any power. They no longer have autonomy over their own existence. And that's why so many people are pissed. That's why people are frustrated. That's why people are lashing out. And we're seeing this across the political spectrum, people from both parties. I think in a lot of ways, the election of Trump was a response to this, that a lot of Republican voters correctly articulated their frustration, but reached the wrong conclusion on how to fix it. Pick whichever side of the equation you want. Like, they used the right equation, but got the wrong answer, or they got the wrong answer, got the right answer, but used the wrong equation. I would personally say it was that they had the right equation, that rich and powerful people are directly harming the tangible lives of millions of Americans of the working class. But their solution was completely incorrect by quite literally electing a billionaire real estate tycoon Nepo baby. So I think that the power dynamic and the balance between the workers, who are the engines of economic productivity, and the boss class, the ownership class, is the single greatest concern I have for the future, because wealth continues to consolidate, and conditions for everyone else continue to fall further and further behind. Everything's getting more and more and more expensive, but wages have stagnated. This is not sustainable. This cannot continue. And then, you know, the step beyond that would, of course, be the economic or the environmental concerns. If biodiversity were to collapse, none of these economic questions matter. Humanity cannot survive on a planet that does not have habitable ecosystems. The Earth will be okay. Life will bounce back in a few, 100,000, few million. I don't know. I'm not a biologist. Years. I do know that life itself will bounce back because the Earth isn't going to die, but humanity will. And unfortunately, at this point, it looks like it's going to be self-inflicted.
Well, the other thing about the rich, and this just astounds me, is that if you have, and this is not an exaggeration by any means, $98 billion in one account, what are you going to do with that money? What good does it do? What good is money unless you spread it around? And, as a quote from a movie, the Hello Dolly, money's like manure. It doesn't do any good unless you spread it around, and encourage people to grow.
And that's the argument for increasing corporate taxes, right? You're incentivizing corporations to reinvest in their employees and their people and their infrastructure rather than storing this money in offshore accounts just so that it can be hoarded into more and more and more. I mean, the what would it be? The stories, let's say, because I'm forgetting the proper word for it, going back a millennia about the dragons sitting on the piles of gold and wealth and cash. That was always the big bad villain of every fairy tale for the last 1,000 years, right? Like humanity understands conceptually that this is not healthy and this is not good for all of us. It is only good for that single individual. And I think, John, if you want to take the point you just made to the next level, if the social contract continue, because Warren Buffett talked about it years and years ago, that the rich have been waging class war on the rest of us and the rich are winning. The rich have violated the social contract. They are clearly trying to do everything they can to eradicate the social contract. And when they do, their position atop the socioeconomic totem pole will collapse because their money and status and power is only reflected by the legitimacy that the system grants it. So if society were to collapse, and you have in your example $100 billion stored in some bank account, that's just a 1 and a 0 on an Excel spreadsheet, dog. That doesn't mean anything in a post-apocalyptic society. You can have all the $100 bills in the world, my man. That's just green toilet paper without the backing of the United States government. Like, all of this is accurate. And I don't understand why the ultra rich don't understand that they would benefit from a happy, healthy society because they would still get to, quote unquote, lead it, versus if we were to have some kind of Mad Max apocalypse, who do you think is getting their door kicked down on day one? like I'm not saying this as a threat. I'm saying this as a promise to them that your $1 billion underground bunker is no longer a safe haven for you. Frankly, it's a cage. You are trapped inside here, and all of the people outside who know that you are the reason that life on Earth ended will be coming for you. All they have to do is find an exhaust port. You don't know how to grow fruits and vegetables, generic multi-billionaire. And see, too, we also have to draw the distinction here between multi-billionaire and hundreds of billions of dollars, because those are very, very different conversations. Look, I'm not sitting here and arguing that if you contribute an immense amount of value to the economic system, sure, you can make the argument that you deserve to be wealthy. $1 billion is more wealth than anybody could spend in 10 lifetimes.
But you also owe that wealth to if you're the top of the mountain, you owe that to the base. You built that wealth on the labor of others. Correct. Right. And that's, I think, that's the conversation that I think we really need to be having as organizers is like, sure, dude, Jeff Bezos, who revolutionized the internet supply chain. All right, man, Amazon has been immensely valuable and I have so many criticisms of that. I don't shop at Amazon, but from like a macroeconomic perspective, Amazon has contributed to the American economy by making product purchasing easy and convenient, right? Anybody can get something delivered to their house in 48 hours or whatever. So great, dude, here's $1 billion. We're going to name a dog park after you. The only reason that you were able to generate that much wealth is all the workers on your factory floor. It's the drivers actually delivering your packages.
And you know, we're seeing stories that drivers have to pee in bottles because they can't even get bathroom breaks. Like, you do not deserve $200 billion. Nobody deserves $200 billion. That is frankly barbaric. And this is applicable to everybody across the spectrum. If you contribute to the economy, all right, you get, you know, you've earned this wealth or whatever. I don't like to use the word earn because, again, it's often on the backs of the actual laborers doing the work. But where do we draw a line in the sand? Right now, America draws no line in the sand, and that makes it completely impossible for the people who are actually generating this economic value to survive. And at some point, when the systems start to fail them, people are going to lash out.
Yeah, and gold toilets and gold sneakers aren't going to save your ass.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So this has to be the last question because we're coming up on the hour. But I will ask it as a two-point question. How did you get your position at OWR, and what projects are you currently working on?
So I, as you mentioned, I'm the executive director. I started as the policy research and lead training organizer. I was hired by our former executive director, who's an incredible organizer, and I learned so much from him over the years because we met through our work on Bernie's 2020 campaign. Assistance, let's call it, not necessarily work. We weren't, but I was elected as a national delegate for Bernie Sanders in 2020 for the convention hosted in my hometown of Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Unfortunately, due to the COVID-19 pandemic, the entire convention was forced to go virtual. Excuse me. I don't fault anyone for that decision. Public safety is paramount. It just sucks for Milwaukee because we missed out on hundreds of millions of dollars. But there were plenty of other events and activities going on at that time, virtual and otherwise. And I met a lot of the other Bernie delegates who introduced me to OWR, and I was hired on. And then, you know, just, you know, keeping the good fight on, keeping working for these goals, setting clear and concise policy demands, and expecting elected officials to follow through on them, advancing these causes through whether it's public education. We had a pretty successful ballot referendum campaign in 2022 in Dunn County. Unfortunately, in Wisconsin, they're non-binding, but it did serve as a nice litmus test for the general public that we were, and national media outlets as well, who covered it after the fact, to be able to prove objectively that individuals, even in ruby red rural conservative Wisconsin communities, support concepts like national not-for-profit health insurance. Because at the end of the day, and I have to give so much credit to the Dunn County supervisors who, and former OWR employee John Calabrese in particular, who led this charge. The argument was that the vast majority of people are facing the same problems, and culture issues, and, you know, the unfortunate binary nature of American politics intentionally divides regular folk against interests that would be beneficial to us as individuals. How do we see past that, and how do we amplify these common goals? And that was an incredibly successful effort by the organization and the individuals all involved. Many projects, of course, across the state always. In particular, right now, we're working on what we're calling the New Wisconsin Idea, which is the 21st Century Economic Justice Bill of Rights. This has support in the state of Wisconsin already, as well as a gubernatorial candidate who is supporting it on her campaign. I think that could be transformational. That has genuinely has the chance to reshape the future of Wisconsin by proudly reclaiming some of our past victories. If we want to drive this state forward, as our motto suggests, and reclaim our mantle as the most progressive state in the union, we have the ability to do so by taking advantage of these North Star beliefs, these policy goals, these roadmaps, let's call it, to guarantee happier, healthier conditions for everyone. The 20 for 26 campaign that we're working on, a living wage for Wisconsin, the tour is going on right now. Again, all work has dignity. And if you are working a full-time job in the state of Wisconsin, you deserve to be able to live on one job and on that job. If a job needs to be done, that job must provide a living wage to the person doing it. Otherwise, that job probably shouldn't exist. And I think so many people in Wisconsin in particular are suffering because of greed at the top of the economic pyramid. That's problematic beyond measure, as we've talked about throughout this meeting. And frankly, it sickens me. That's one of the things that motivates me every day is knowing how many people are working their butts off to improve their lives and improve the lives of their friends and family and neighbors and their community. But they're not being rewarded for the work that they're doing because somebody else higher than them on the economic scale is siphoning the excess wealth of their labor and hoarding it for themselves. We're also working on some projects like Wisconsin Conservation Congress Reformation. I believe Wisconsin is the only state in the country that has a citizen oversight body that's able to make recommendations to the DNR and the NRB, the Department of Natural Resources, and the Wisconsin or the Natural Resources Board. And it's citizen elected positions all across the state. So regular folk who want to get involved and engaged in environmental issues can run for these positions. Unfortunately, the entire organization has been co-opted by a few of the special interest groups, primarily, the hunters, the trappers, the individuals who believe that they're the only ones who have a right to Wisconsin's resources because they're the consumptive users of Wisconsin's resources. Guess what? Consumptive users are only 11% of the population. That means 89% of Wisconsinites who also deserve to be able to enjoy our pristine resources are being left outside. They're not a part of the conversation.
Well, yeah, and I would argue the idea of the 11% consumer because we are all consumers. All of us are consumers of
in one way or another, right? We consume clean water, fresh air.
Exactly.
Yes, yeah. But that, from a special interest perspective, consumptive usually refers to someone who is, going out in the woods and utilizing nature for whatever activity it may or not be. But you're exactly right that we are all using Wisconsin because we all rely on clean air and clean water and habitable ecosystems if we want to be able to raise our families and live.
I guess we do have time for one more question, and that is, and I appreciate you, William, because I know you're everywhere around Wisconsin, and I always see you at events.
90% of solidarity is showing up, John.
Exactly. So could you tell us a little bit about your work with other organizations like Building Unity, the FOC, just a little bit of the work you've done with other organizations, because unity is very important.
Yes, unity is the answer. It's the solution, in my opinion. Again, going back to the same argument that I was making earlier, our advantage is our bodies and our numbers. We don't need 50 different organizations that are all doing similar work, but with slight nuances to their approach. When we could all be working together, I love to say 10,000 groups of 10 people have no real power, but 10 groups of 10,000 people could change the world overnight. And we do have quite a few organizations in the state that are doing excellent work. And something that I've really been trying to do with OWR is find a way to get all of us not just in the room, because it's easy to do that. We are friends and we are like-minded and we're working towards similar goals, which makes it easy to organize around these goals. But when everybody has their hyper-specific focus, it can be really hard to see past the blinders and recognize how the other hyper-specific focuses that other organizations have intertwine with your issue, and how perhaps a joint effort would allow us to make more progress on this problem than when we're going alone. It's the old African proverb that if you want to go fast, you go alone, but if you want to go far, you go together. And that's what I think something like the Fighting Oligarchy Coalition would be so good for, is serving as essentially an umbrella entity that I don't want to tell people what to do, because I'm not an expert on everything. There are organizations around this state who have been working on issues for decades, who know it a million times better than I could ever imagine. You keep doing that work, but you let me know how I can assist you. You let me know how I can amplify the work that you're doing. What can I do to make your job easier? And then, of course, returning the favor. We do not need to be marching to the same beat, but we do need to be marching in the same direction. And I think that's a lot easier to do with a some effort to centralize at least the brainstorming, whether it's just reporting back on what you're doing, requesting assistance where you need it, creating an all-in-one hub of sorts to serve as a base of operations, as a home page that the myriad different organizers and organizations can use to kind of get a feel for what's going on at any given time, or request assistance on any given project or anything along those lines. I think that is desperately needed in this moment. And I think we lack a kind of central figure to serve as that leader. It's an unfortunate reality that even in democratic systems, right, like I'll use fantasy football as an analogy again, the constitutional republic versus direct democracy argument. A constitutional republic is a democracy, full stop. If you knew the definition of any of those words, you would understand, much like saying anyone who says, I don't drive a car, I drive a Toyota Camry, they're missing the forest, they're missing the trees from the forest. But we do need to have some structure in place to allow everybody to feel heard and validated and welcomed, but also not so slow to act that we can't get anything done. And that's the red tape argument that you see a lot at the national level, for why government is so ineffective and so inefficient. Red tape exists for a reason. It's usually written in blood, as they say. But at the same time, how can we balance getting stuff done with 10,000 working groups to all confirm the same solution that we pass on a week and a half later, until all of a sudden it's 3 years down the line and we're just starting a project that was desperately required 2 years ago. I think we as a movement need to do a better job balancing that, of course. But that's so much easier to do when you have all of these different organizations and entities at the table. And then to finish my fantasy football comparison, a direct democracy is incredibly effective when you have 10 people in a league. Here's the problem. All 10 people vote on it. 6 people say yes, 4 people say no. Great. You pass it forward. That is not possible to do in a country of 350 million people. If we had some machine that could automatically register the authentic response for every single person on earth, sure, maybe we could do it that way. But unfortunately, that's not realistic. People have lives, people have jobs, people have families. We're not going to be sending out, the House of Representatives isn't going to be sending out an email to every one of their constituents saying, hey, what do you think on this issue? Vote yes or no, and calculating the votes and voting accordingly, right? That's just not how the United States government functions. So finding the balancing line between efficiency and effectiveness, I think, is priority. Has to be one of the top priorities for the progressive movement going forward. And the way to do that is by getting the many different leaders to work together in some capacity, whether it's even just sharing information or whether it's holding events like the Unity Summit or whatever it may or may not be. We do need to do a better job of that, certainly.
Thank you, William. The cuckoo went off about a minute ago, which tells me that our time is up, but I wanted to thank you for coming today and for doing this interview. This is William Walters with OWR, and I'm John Stanley, and this is Ordinary People. Thank you for watching. I want you to think about what I said back in the beginning about being the atom. I want you to think about the fact that we are stardust, we are golden, as the song goes, that we are part of the universe in a much larger capacity than most people understand. And as it's been said, keep looking up. This is John Stanley with Ordinary People.